Hi everyone, it is Tuesday, July 28th. We're going to continue with the communication about the, speaking about the collective consciousness, the hive mind. Very interesting topic, as I stated. This is part 2, so go back to the other initial communications. This is to the physicists, the scientists, those of you in assisting you with your own work. Now, we could go back to me mentioning the hive mind in 2020 or 2022. So I'm going to try to add a little bit of that into the communication because this is a part of a greater work of mine. So when you're speaking about any type of collective consciousness, we're speaking about a specific portion, a specific area in space, usually a minor portion, a minor area in space where a great impact has happened. That's why this consciousness was able to come into formation. Now, with a collective consciousness, or hive mind consciousness, is not connected to the whole of the mathematical formulation of the universe. We know that the whole of everything is a mathematical index of order. Now, the collective consciousness, a hive mind consciousness, is a portion of the universe that's disconnected from that connection of order, even if that, so the hive mind in its motor transmitter, that consciousness space where it's located and it's just there, it is for it only correlates with what is total for it, like that, because it's just within this segment, isolated like that. It's a hive mind, meaning that it's not connected to the entirety of the mathematical formulation of all that is. So for it, and it being small, this is all of it, like that. Now, so it is very, and that's a very potent connection, because you have this small, and this is the consciousness, like that. Okay, now is because the whole of everything is not a consciousness. It's a mathematically ordered system. Now, so when we're speaking about what I call the motor, and I call it the motor because it has to be, the wave has to come from external to it, external from it, because it does not create its own, it does not create its own base source of that type of blast that would have happened and created it into its state of matter. Now, so I just call it a motor, because with any type of motor, it has to be pathway circulated with any type of motor. So it is a and I don't use, well, and I'm still not going to use the word. Okay, so it's the, let's say when the blast happened in this position within space, this is we could call it the core of where it took place, like that. Now is it became, because it's a consciousness in a hive mind, it's like that, and it became a isolated positioning within the whole of the numerical factor of what the total is. Now, so it doesn't function within that because it's a consciousness. It's a hive mind consciousness. It functions within what can be come into it, and bringing it is its presence and permanency in its state of being a hive mind like that. Now, so when we're talking about the core, and which is what I call the motor, hive minds always have a central processing hub. So that would be the core. It would have the primary unit, or a primary biosystemic and synthetic transmitter. It has both of them. So that lets us know the type of impact, and it helps us calculate the time of the impact happened to have created a consciousness within space and within this specific location of space. Now, when we talk about the target signal, I bypass catatonic individual units and apply direct data to the simulation of the central hub first. Now, meaning that with the individual units, remember the debris, because when the explosion happened, the debris is what is the hive mind motor, is what brings the transmitter possibility of maintaining in that state of consciousness that it was exploded into, like that. It was due to some type of collision, some type of great force, external, and moving through it and past it, like that. It's just a passing within a area of space within the universe, is a collision, like that. So when we talk about the individual units, they are the debris that happened after the explosion. That's the consciousness, the debris, like that. Now, the unit, the base unit, the motor, is where the impact happened. Right there, okay. Now, if we apply this to people, which, if you apply that to human being of this consciousness, they will be those individual catatonic individual units, because when you're speaking of a hive mind or a collective consciousness does not have an independent consciousness. It does not have any type of independent actions. It does not have independent thoughts. It does not have any type of independent utility. It's a part of a consciousness that came into being through an explosion. And it belongs to the debris of that explosion, the individual units, and that's where it gets its consciousness of that association within that unit, within that debris, is consciousness, is conscious. Now, so if you speak about humans and add that and them being a part of this consciousness, that's why they have a connection like that. So because it's of the same consciousness, that's why they have the same experiences with minor variations. Now, even though their experiences could be very unique to them, they could see themselves as very individualistic, but they are not. They're part of a hive mind consciousness. Now, this is the mind. Now, we're not talking about the mind of the completeness of everything. That's a different mathematically formulated mind. We're speaking about this mind being a part of a consciousness like that. Now, so with the signal and bypassing the debris. Now, that would be, if you're speaking about, obviously, is space, and doing the work, we bypass the debris, because the focus is on the actual core. Now, with analyzing space from the debris, you know what the core is sustained and utilized from, and its timeline as it relates to it coming into formation, and the timeline takes one outside of this area with where this explosion is situated, and this debris is in formation around it and only stays within that. So it it takes of where this it takes it where the impact came from that passed through it, and just went. It's like just went through this area of space, just like a significant velocity, and it spoke, and it's but sustained, and the debris from that wreckage is sustained. Now, so it creates a hive mind. Now it's separated from the explosion, separated it from the greater numerical factor of the order of the universe, of the total of what the universe actually is. So it's regulated within its own positioning. So its units are a signal of power source for it. But its units, because they're catatonic, they can't create their own power source like that. Their power source has to come from the completeness of what their numerical factor is. And because they're not connected to that, they're connected to a consciousness. They can't just, because they're not connected to that whole of everything. Now, the consciousness was created through an explosion. Okay, so when identifying the primary node or the central the impact is in locating the core. You have to be noted that hive minds always have a central processing hub, so that's going to be identified. Now, the administrator of the neuroelectric shock, meaning the synchronized pulse, we have to apply massive synchronized electrical or neurochemical pulse across the network's known frequencies. Now, the known frequencies are the debris around this consciousness, like that. It's debris around this consciousness. And when you speak about people, it will be some of them, they have more of this, because we're speaking about the central hub. Some of them, they have more of where the impact happened, like that. So they would be, but the debris around it, because it's catatonic like that, it does not, a hive mind of consciousness, a collective consciousness does not function independently. So it's as the debris is what brings this here, brings the wave here, but it cannot create any type of wave to bring, because it's disconnected, because it's a consciousness disconnected from the total of the numerical factor of what everything is, and that in the order of the complete system as a whole. Now, and because it was derived through not through the natural order of the numerical factor, it was derived through not through becoming, it was derived through an impact like that. And this core mechanism was the direct impact like that. So it cannot sustain itself like that. And then this gravity around it keeps it. And the gravity, it can, because the impact came from an external location, just coming in this hive mind like that. Okay, it's that. So when you're speaking about people, if you want to add it to people so that you can have the general idea of how it affects those of a collective consciousness. And remember, we're not speaking about how they spin it. Okay, we're speaking about science now in physics of how it is and what it is. So when you speak about them and debris, some of them that are of this consciousness, they have more of the impact than others. And then but this here, and because they are still catatonic, because they're a part of a hive mind, a collective consciousness, not an individual numerical becoming of the whole of the entirety of all that is, which creates a type of independency like that within an order. Okay, this came through accident, is how the consciousness. It came through a disaster, a wreckage in space. So if you speak about them in them being, this has to always be sustained within a state of consciousness through that. But these, because they are catatonic and are of the consciousness, cannot sustain it. So because this has a impact memory, it has an impact memory coded within its creation, or coded within its new what it became, it wanes in sufficient fire to be what it is, like that. So it wanes in that sufficient fire, it'll go down. So when you're speaking about people and how they're connected as a consciousness, if something happened or happens, or the onset of that happens, because it always will, because they will be a part of a collective consciousness. Now, in the time of that, in calculating that time within space of when that will always happen, because it would be also connected to the people, you could calculate the time period of that rotation happening of this in that memory within those atoms of that formation when that impact happened, and it going like the memory of that explosion, like that. Okay, so it goes down. Now, as response, these catatonic debris would be also, because they're of that collective consciousness, affected like that. Now, because they cannot sustain independently, because they're of a collective consciousness like that. So when you're speaking about humans, it would be those that carry more of this impact consciousness at specific times within how it represents itself on Earth, and people that are of this consciousness, they will carry within them that impact atomic nuclei of those atoms, in the memory of that coded impact within that, because time is coded within atoms, within that positional space of the impact actually happening. So if the onset, how it would affect them is something can happen to them on Earth, or the onset of something happening within them or to them. Now, because of this onset and their collective consciousness, and the debris of the rest of them that are not close to the core, but are still connected to it because they're a consciousness, they could or may not feel that, but they will be a part of how this has to, this core responds to what is happening regarding that memory of the impact, and it being a repetition, because the hive mind is only repeating and having the same experience, just like the same experience on Earth, but with minor variation like that. Okay, so and they should feel very well connected. Now, even though if we take it into astrology, with the Aquarius, the nature is that of dividing the whole, but only can divide the whole of this consciousness, cannot divide the whole of what the actual completion of everything is. Dividing it into the simplistic, superficial nature of this. And how those functionings with the people that are of this consciousness, it works well. Because they can function within that, because they're a hive mind of consciousness like that. Now, no matter how they function independently or what of each other, how they think of one another, they're still of that consciousness that gets its charge from the ethers and that impact that happened there. So when this, so that's what would happen, and it would be time period calculated within spaces and time of when this nucleus has the memory of that impact and how it starts to function. This is how it will start to function. it sends out a signal, because remember, they're a hive mind. So if you're a hive mind, a collective consciousness, you're not, despite what you think, you're not independently functioning like that. You're not an individual. You're not independently functioning. You have no independent thoughts. You're not making actions independently, even though you can think that you are. You're a part of a consciousness. And the consciousness isn't about anybody. We're not talking about psychology, about, well, my mother told me this, or the people at the school said that, or my group, we're speaking about science. Now, so you're not making any independent decisions. You're not taking any type of independent actions. You don't have any type of independent thought. You're actually in a catatonic state. And the only reason that you're able to be or do or act or think at all or move is because of this, and what created the primary unit of what causes them to still be in that positional stasis of what that impact left and how it came into fruition. So what this does, because it will be going into that of the impact, it sends out because it's connected, it's a hive mind, it's a collective conscious. It sends out the distress signal. They don't pick it up, the debris, and if the humans that are connected to the debris doesn't pick it up as a distress signal. They are units of units in a catatonic state, and they pick up the signal of, in this core sends this distress signal out. Now is because it's in distress, because it's the coded atoms of time of that impact happening. It is not sending it out to them. They are a part of it. They are the debris of the wreckage there. So when that signal is sent, when the memory is there, is a signal like it's an impact. Okay, so it's similar to the reverse impact. So when it says it, these may or may not pick it up. It doesn't matter if they pick it up or not. They are still a part of this, and this here becomes very because it needs now to conserve the wave that keeps it in stasis. It needs to conserve the what came along with when the impact happened, and that force. It needs to sustain that now, because it's what caused it to come into fruition. Like, so it could get like very non-responsive and able to save that of what brought it into fruition, the impact of that charge like that. Okay, that firing that brought it. It's really quite, but it sent out a distress signal. Okay, like that. So what would happen is that when you're speaking about the biological factors of the humans that are connected to this collective consciousness, you would go into neurochemical pulses across the network's known frequencies. Now, when it sends out this signal, and it's not them picking up the signal, because they're of a catatonic state. They don't pick up anything. In the experience, or whatever they could call experience on Earth, is just one singular what one could call experience that comes from an external field that's not even connected to them. And it can create, in this field can create a mirror, the liking of being in its existence and taking part in the greater whole of what the cosmos are. And the consciousness doesn't, because of a collective consciousness does not survive or exist on its own. And it wasn't meant to, because it happened through is the result of a wreckage. So, and with science and knowing this, it is obviously, as a physicist and dealing with the whole of everything, this so when this memory cycles in, because it always will, because that's the only way that it can be into formation, it sends out, it has to go in a type of a catatonic dormant state too, similar to the debris around it, but not exactly, but it sends out this distress signal because it needs the wave of the impact of what caused it to come into fruition. It needs the charge, the firing. But these are catatonic, so they can't create that. So the signal that it sends out is for them to become silent and catatonic, more catatonic than they are, because it's preserving the fire of what caused it to come into being from the impact and what sustains it into being. So it sends that out in order to gain a wave. It can use that as an order to gain a wave. The debris is used. It can only go by the transmitting signal, despite if they think it's independent. Actually, it's not, because they're a part of a collective consciousness. So it sends out that because it's gone into a catatonic state similar to theirs, to their natural state of what they are actually. And then and these follow with that, but they are also utilized because they bring in a wave like that. Because they're connected to this, they're also utilized to try to bring in a wave that does not connect, because they have to bring the wave in from the whole of what the cosmos are, and they can't, because they're catatonic and they're just the debris. They're not even the primary unit. So how that would affect humans? Well, that'll part of this. Well, they will be a part of the debris. Some of them will have more of the atomic nuclei of the actual impact. They will go into that state because the memory is coded within the atoms, but they have something can happen to them. Their own set of something happening. It happens rotationally, like, and it will continue to happen like that. And it's just a part of the nature of how it was, its formation and what was sustaining it. So something would maybe happen like that. It happen would be internal. Everything is outside of their control because they're a part of a connection. Even a unit, it did not choose to be impacted and come into fruition. Now, so so they would be that way, and then they fall off. When we're talking about how it affects humans, they fall off like it could be like dominoes, and going into what this transmitter has, that solid, dormant, more into the catatonic state. But is the reason, despite what they think the reason is because this one is, the core unit is becoming catatonic because the fire is lost like that. It's going through the memory of the actual impact. So it has to go into that subdued state because it needs the impact fire that brought it into its consciousness. So with the humans and them being connected to that, they will fall in line with that silence, but it's at go flat line. But it's like, and the ones that are more closer to this, they'll be the last ones that fall in line with that catatonic state, but they don't have any other choice but to fall in line with the more of the catatonic, but reserving the fire that it has state like that. Just fall in line with it. Now, because of science and with us knowing in the whole of everything that is, so consciousness is just a small part accident. Knowing the whole of what it is, have the power to replicate the impact, and it brings this back into its primary unit, and it brings the debris back into their primary position in the working order. Or having the option to not do it and cut the signal of whatever this transmit as it relates to how it has to continue to have the fire that created it and keeps it sustained. And that is inclusive of its debris units and everything connected to it. It's units of debris and everything connected to it. Like cutting it, and when cutting it, it recognizes that, because it's not being able to pick up on anything external regarding what is utilized to replicate a type of fire, the actual energy that the impact was derived of, that passed through it and caused it to become a consciousness. But it's just the result of a wreckage. Now, so we're going to talk about how this is neutralized. So we know injecting a synthetic heartbeat or clock signal would function well, because when we're speaking about establishing a baseline, because this works within a clock, and also inclusive of a biological pacemaker, the collective consciousness debris in space, and then if we speak about the people that are connected to this consciousness, they need that collective rhythmic external data signal to sync to, like that. Now, or because it doesn't function independently. It doesn't, and it can't, within time rotations that's coded within the atoms of the actual impact memory, it can't have the real impact. How many times within space is that type of impact going to happen? Not many. So the memory of the impact is what, from the time period of the actual impact in space happening, the memory of the impact is what has kept it sustained as a consciousness. So this rotational time of what this goes through, of the memory of that impact coming and it needing it, but it's having to draw from catatonic debris. And when you apply that to people, the people are catatonic because they're a part of a collective consciousness that doesn't have an independent functioning. So it would be so to restore it, as opposed to it having to draw from a fire source that is debris, is not of, because it came into formation through an impact in that source. Now, so it only has the memory of that initial impact in that fire source, like that. It doesn't have the sustainable of it. Now, that small memory doesn't sustain it. That's why it has to draw within and become more catatonic, like these, or completely catatonic, the debris around it. And the people, if you add it to people, we don't have to add this to people, but if the example of humans that are part of this consciousness, they will be completely catatonic. Now, even though they're functioning, but they're functioning because there's a non-associated field close to where this impact happened that creates the experience of experiencing, that mirrors an experience of experiencing and being a part of the whole of what the cosmos are, that numerical order. Now, but this consciousness works outside of that. That's why it can't. It's connected, like. Okay, so when So when it goes through this time cycle, to generate it on its own basis, to bring in that impact, that fire of that initial impact, what brought it into fruition, the core unit, it has to replicate a charge similar to what it consists of. And it can't do that because it's not a part of the whole of the numerical factor of order of what is complete cosmos are. And neither is debris. Now, when you add that to people, okay, they're not a part of the completeness. They're a part of a collective consciousness. Now, so in a unit of that consciousness, the actual motor, that is only sustained and has been sustained through that time period through its memory that is coded in its atoms of its impact. Okay, so this is how the people will respond to what's happening there with this, and this is going to work within. I don't know, when you're talking about, you have to calculate when you're talking about space time periods. I have that numerical factor down, but because I don't work with the human Earth and its representations of the cosmos in a that's not my primary focus, but obviously can relate it to because of what happens in space. Now, so with the people, they would can only do what space does. They can only, because they're a part of a collective consciousness, so they would be in a catatonic state. And when we block or cut the line of this being able to have that representation of the impact fire, these debris, and when you add that to the people, they may or may not feel that either, but this core unit will send out a transmitter of what happened, because it realizes that the fire is cut like that. So it realizes it. Now, if we fire them back up, fire this core unit back up. You can't fire the debris up, you fire the core unit up. If you fire the core unit up, the debris and the people that are of this conscious, they start to function again. Even though they're still not functioning independently, they start to function again, like that again, and it will swell this, it swells this, like that. Because it brings in the fire of what this first impact was that brought this into fruition. Now, it brings it, because when this debris, or you call debris the people that are collected, that part of the consciousness, they'll start interacting with what is outside of that consciousness, like that. But they only can interact to a certain extent, like that, because they're not a part of that numerical factor of order. They're part of a consciousness that came into fruition through a impact or wreckage in space. So it's about how the core gathers synthesis, and it has to be external to itself. So to get their collective consciousness, the wheels turning, which will be this, it will be similar to maybe force feeding a repeated command or behavioral loop, because you're talking about biological, because people are connected to this consciousness. So you would have to do both of them to and send it through the network to get the collective cognitive wheels turning. And it goes to this here, and then it comes out of the catatonic state that the debris is always in, even though this has that catatonic state within it, but becomes like that when it's in the memory of the impact, like that. Now, so that'll get the wheels turning, and how to associate with people. These people will start popping up. They'll start coming out like that, like that. sometimes they'll start coming out and popping up because this core unit of the consciousness that they're connected to, it realizes that it's going in the flat line like that. So they'll start because and the only reason they're popping up is because this is sending out a distress signal of where did the wave go, where did the wave go like that. But when the wave starts to die down, that fire starts to down with regarding that memory cycle, the distress will cause it to try to reserve, so it'll become catatonic, like in the signal of everybody else to be quiet, because it's becoming, the core is catatonic. It needs to preserve the nature of the source of what brought it into fruition, which was a impact. It needs that. It needs the system fired up. Now, and because the debris cannot fire up the system, it's a part of the consciousness. So even when you're talking about this cascade of data, fibrillation, it can also like cause a chain reaction of bringing the fire into this core unit here, because when we're speaking of space, when you're speaking of space, it would be where, well, in space the core unit is accessible. Now, when you're speaking about humans, because they will be of the debris particles of this impact wreckage, if the ones that are closer to the core unit wreckage of how it came to fruition, if they're inaccessible, you could just pick a cluster of the individual units. It's like you see them one, you see them all. Okay, it's like that, and it lets you know the field impression of experience that they are having, that they classify as being a part of the actual functionings of everything that consists of the universe, which is a highly structured numerical order. Also, with forcing a bridge, and we're speaking of when inducting the fire of the memory of the fire into the core unit, so that it can remain in this positional impact position of sustaining its permanency. And this is how the permanency functions. Forcing a bridge, it was like, and it can like manually jump starting a small localized cell is it could sync mechanism. The sync mechanism could naturally trigger a cascading reboot down into the line of the neighboring unit. So whatever is done here scientifically, it hits the debris too. So the debris of the wreckage. So when you correspond that with people, whatever happens to the central unit, and the people that are that catatonic functioning state, it cascades down to them too. So that's why they'll start to become alive again. Okay, the flat line is over. Oh, they're out. Where were they? Oh, where were they? Okay, they're in a catatonic because of what this unit is doing. Now, despite how that field impression causes them to think that their independent choice of that catatonic state is there, they're functioning within a not within the numerical factor of impression, field impressions. They're functioning within a mirror of a field impression that is outside of the whole of what everything within the nature of space is. Now, if we talk about isolating or identifying the hidden primary node, or the central is the primary node, of that has stalled. Now, on Earth, when you're talking about people, you could just, it's done by observing the irregularities of how energy, data, and biology flows through the collective, like that. It's like it just gets. This is a constant. It's like that is a collective conscious of how it's same experience. It's like, so observing that now in space is. Is the obviousness is there with people, and when you're associating it with people and them putting a part of this conscious is because the individuals, they cannot act on their own. Their consciousness is a single point holding the network's blueprint, like that. This is holding the blueprint, and it is any type of experience, because they're humans, is coming from an external field that's not connected to it but located in space beyond it, like that. So is, and we talk when we're in, even with mapping the passive neural drag, and we talk about, because they're the human collective, they're created of these atoms, and their time is time is coded within atoms. And I talked about time coding within atoms, but not associating this, but the time is coded within these atoms, and these are the atoms that they're made of this conscious that is a wreckage point in the passive neural drag. Oh, where did that? And that's why we can calculate the time of what's going on in space. Get your ass up, okay? Okay. Because you can't do anything with these, because they're just debris. So the humans are just debris. They can't, even if they wanted to. And then if some, when it starts to wake up, and some start coming out. But then if this isn't charged fully with the fire, that is the exact fire that replicates the memory of the actual impact and that specific type of wave that came through, these are coming, and then they go back. Somebody, electric shock. It's me, okay. As the super scientist, it's like, is that, so you have to cut the signal of what this primary this primary conduit sends out, because they're catatonic, they can't do anything. So you have to cut it with them, because you can't reboot it through them, because they can only function like that. Okay, so you have to cut that and and deal with the unit. So, because even when dormant, a collective network has a natural pull or a single drag directed toward its origin point, like that, the actual consciousness, like that. So, so you have to cut them off, because they only could do based on this, and this isn't doing damn well. Okay, is that here? So so you have to get them out. By specific methods, even when like scanning the catatonic individuals using a electromagnetic or neural imaging sensor, because when you're speaking about humans, it would be you're going to the neurology of the atoms that they are created from, that this is the time is coded within. When you're talking about space itself, it would be about it'll be about the debris being separated from the impact point, so that a specific firing can happen, and then they have to continue as a consciousness. You can't keep it separate. But because the debris is basically useless, just like the people that are connected to this consciousness, they're useless for this consciousness. They're the debris of a wreckage. So this is the base of where the impact was. So you have to separate them from it, and to bring in about a replicated fire to bring it back into consciousness that they can, so that they can function too. Is that now? So let's see. So is quite so. So, because even when you speak about people that are closer connected to this and have more of this atomic nuclei, it will be easy to be led towards that density signals, that highest density signal source, because they'll be the one going through something regarding the impact memory more. These that are of the debris, they can only function based on what's going on there, despite them thinking that they're functioning independently. And remember, this here, the unit requires a massive amount of a specific type of firing energy. It requires what brought it into a state of consciousness and being, and separated from everything that is a part of the universe. Because when you're a part of everything that's a part of the universe, you don't derive any type of firing from anything else. When you come into a consciousness through an era, you only sustain through that, but that impact isn't going to come. It was a one-time event within space, within a position in space. So it requires a lot of sustenance, to sustain a multi-body consciousness. And the debris and the people that are part, they don't have it like that. Okay, is that now in the infrastructure anomalies that are around it, when you're speaking about this field system that gives the I almost say the propaganda of having an experience. In bioorganic nutrient conduits, because of the people, when it's associated with earth, and it's just not very not a numerically factored in chain of reaction, because it's outside of the whole of what the cosmos are. And even when we get in things like how it mirrors living neurons, we speak about people that are part of this consciousness and how they are fired up and sustained due to being connected to this. You talk about their nervous systems and shifts in their nervous systems is not, and them having thermal tissue burns. So when you're infusing this, is very infusing this with the fire that created it. And he was talking about people that have this coded within their systems that are part of this collective consciousness. These wave pulses, they mimic natural neural activity, especially when you're bringing this back into its state of how it was formed, and they're connected to that consciousness. He's talking about the nerve cores and brain stems, and it'll force a single unit synapses to flood with neurotransmitters that and it'll send a massive chemical electrical chain reaction back through the shared biological network. So so when you're talking about humans and and those that share more of the impact, the debris humans that carry that part of the catatonic state, you could send the fire through them, but they might not survive it. but it'll signal to all of those that are to that of that consciousness. It'll signal that awakening, but it'll be talking about the nervous system. You're talking about because it's going to be a chain reaction. It's speaking about their brain waves. Remember, there's. Are you there? Are you there? Okay, it's there. So if you send them a joke, okay, and it'll reverberate all the way back to the core unit. We're speaking about space. There'll be shocked into how they were formed and back into that formation of how this came into existence. So these are very delicate. These are very delicate handlings. Now, because we speak have to be cellular recharging, because the people of this collective consciousness talking about electrical jump starts and metabolic kick starts. So because this is a part of my greater work that is very detailed in the secret society I created of scientists, but that's I only talk about that there, because this is like we're speaking about flare power surges, and but this has to happen because this is what the natural state of this unit is. It has to derive that, mimic that from external to it, but it can't do it within those that are of its consciousness. So it has to try to connect to the whole of what the cosmos are, to like generate or bring in, so it could show up in humans as being silent, because it'll bring an energy towards them. What? Hello? Are you there? Like that. So it brings in an energy. But this is what is the basis of that happening and causing that to happen. But it doesn't work. But in order to stop this, you have to cut them and jumpstart this, or through one of them to jumpstart the whole system again. They may not survive that type of fire. That type of voltage. But it will be the voltage that reverberates throughout the whole system to reach this here. Now, this consciousness impact doesn't care what they survive. It cares about sustaining its own way that it came into formation. And the necessity of that being regenerated through time-coded atoms that are of its origins. Because we're speaking about a unified collective consciousness, a unified hive mind. And it's the core, like the fountainhead of the debris energy, but it cannot create an impact that caused it to come into fruition, which brought a type of fire and energy. Like it does, it's in that. Fire is only coded within the atoms, but it is not coded to the impression and the impact and the power that the actual impact took to bring it into fruition. So when we're talking about reverse engineering their entire grid, their entire power grid, you will speak about, when we're speaking about space, you can do that through the debris particles that are around the core unit, because so you speak about those debris particles when you speak about humans and how that will affect them, that those that are part of this consciousness, it will be and you're pumping power backwards into the empty central reservoir, it will be it sustains this for the next time encoded cycle of it going the way the debris always is, like that. Okay. But that will have an impact on the humans that are of a collective consciousness. When you're of a collective consciousness, you are, and it'll instantly revive them. And it won't be about reviving them when you speak about the people. Just like in space, it's not about reviving the debris. It's about the core unit and how it came into its formation so that the consciousness can be. So it is that. So you can do it through the people. Is talking about consider the fire, but it's going to ripple through all of them, and they're not going to survive that type of impact. So we have to mimic the first impact of this core unit coming into is what is the conscious. They're a part of a collective consciousness. They're not a consciousness. They're a part of a collective consciousness. This is the consciousness, the impact area, the impact, the point of impact, the point of the wreckage. They are the wreckage. The people that are a part of this connection, they're the wreckage. Just like the debris is the wreckage. It's the wreckage. Like that. So they're connected to the main unit, but not on the main unit like that. Now, so and when they fall in line with the core of this consciousness, it flatlines first, and then they just have to fall in line. But those that are more of this atomic nucleus within their makeup, with physical biological makeup, they are within their atoms, encoded within that time frame of what happened in space. They can fall in line last of what the core has to do in order to sustain and reserve that what brought it into fruition, but it can't. But because it does not have the capacity to create, because it came into existence through an impact like that. Okay, so the sustaining, it can't do that for a long time. It can't stay in that position like that. So just like it doesn't have the capacity to be a part of the greater whole of the numerical formation of the order of the cosmos. And even what it experiences as experience, when you're speaking about the humans, it is a field close to it that could be not so close, but close enough so that it can replicate what is happening in the cosmos when you're talking about space and the whole and the entirety of the numerical formation of order. Like that. So with the people that are part of the consciousness, they're connected from the whole. And whatever they experience is similar. They experience with very minor deviations like that. And what they call experience is just a replica of a field that is a mirroring the whole of what actually is in existence. We're going to keep it there because this is very deep. It goes into in-depth. I'm leaving a lot of it out because I don't want to go into the details of that. I saved that for that's saved for the science there. So I'm trying to talk past it and talk over it. Okay, everyone, until next time, thanks for watching. Bye.